We covered most of the topics as part of object-oriented programming. So we are done with it. And in today's session, we're gonna start a topic which is exception handling. In any of the programming language, in any of the programming language, we faces two kind of interruptions. When a normal program is continuously running, and there is a two type of interruptions. The first type is errors. First type is errors. And second type is exceptions. So in programming languages, we faces two kind of interruptions. And second thing is exceptions. Okay. So here errors is what is syntax errors, mostly syntax errors. Syntax errors is something which we cannot handle it. So which you have to resolve it at the time of program execution. If you have any syntactical errors, by the program itself will not run. Okay, so that is errors. Exceptions is something which can be handled. Which can be handled. Let me show you an example for syntax errors, and we'll go with the exception. For example, for errors, right? Normally, how you declare a function, right? You declare a def keyword and add here. Whenever you are declaring add function, right, you have to put it in arguments in a parenthesis and give some values. You are just in print add function. Right. Now what I'm doing is I'm removing this colon. I remove the colon. So now the indentation block has been gone. Here you'll get syntactical errors. You see here, you get syntax errors. It is expecting what? It is expecting a colon. This is something which you have to solve it by manually. This is something which cannot be handled in programming. Syntax errors cannot be handled, right? For example, even though I'm having some 100 lines of codes here later, those will not go until you resolve this error. Until you resolve this error, the remaining lines of code will never get executed. That is errors. But exceptions is something which can be handled. Exceptions are something which can be handled. For example, take an exception. What is the most common exception we faces when we try to access any indexes? In this string, just take name Rama. In this Rama, I'm trying to get a third character. I'm trying to get the third character. Here, we'll get a third character. If I try to get the same thing, with a different index, which is not in the capacity of a string, for example, I'm getting the fifth index. Trying to get fifth index, we'll get what? Index errors. This is something as an exception which can be handled. Syntax errors are something which cannot be handled. So these are as part of errors, we cannot solve it. But exceptions are something which can be handled. How I can handle this exception is, let me show you. You have to put it in a piece of blocks. You have to keep it to handle any exceptions. You have to put it in a blocks of code. The first block is try block. First is try block. Keep it in the try block. And we have another block which is except. Which is except. And what kind of exception you are getting it? What kind of exception? I'm going to get an index error. This is the exception I'll get it. If something wrong occurs while doing this code, while executing this code, if any exception occurs, so that is a possibility of this exception. This is the possibility. If you are not sure, then we can discuss. There is a base class is there. That base class is an exception, which is the supermost class. Okay. For now, I'm just handling that index headers and just putting it a colon, just print got exception. Okay. So after exception, I'm printing after try block and except block, I'm printing. Third, right, except block. If you see here, I'm removing one colon here. I'm removing one colon. If I remove a colon, what is happening now? This is syntactically wrong. This program is syntactically wrong, and you get a syntax errors with the line number first. Even the control is not coming here. The control is not coming here. Okay, so I'm having error at the first line, right? Okay, that is fine. You can skip this entire block of code, but this line of code should be executed. But what is happening? Error, it cannot be handled. So error, you have to resolve it. And once I resolve this, then you can go and handle the exception. I'll be getting an exception here. I'll be getting an exception here. For example, let me keep it here. Yeah. Try. I'm a try block. If I execute this, the control comes here. It is checks whether it's syntactically correct or not. Any syntax error is there or not. Now I don't have any syntax errors. Then let me go and execute the program execution. Okay, it will first come and I am try block. It will print that since this line will raise an exception, that exception handle is where an except block. If you handle any exception, you need like except block. If exceptions are get handled, then except block. Okay, so let's execute this. What you are getting it? First, you are getting a print statement. First line will print it in the try block. Okay, I am a try block. Later, when you executed this line, you will get exception, which is index error. And I'm getting this exception, I got an exception. Okay. So since exception is very well handled here, so the other line of code is also getting executed. Okay. So there is no interruptions in your programming execution since you have handled your exception. There is no interruptions. So what is try block and what is except? Try block is something. Try block is something. Any piece of code will raise an exception. Put it in try block. Okay. If any piece of code will raise an exception, then put it in a try block. So the corresponding except block will get executed and exceptions will be handled. So you will not be having any interruptions at the running of program. Let me show you one another example. So where you can put it. The most common example, right? When you're dividing any number with a zero, you are dividing any number with a zero, you will get infinite. As per mathematics, right? Anything by zero, it's infinite.
Yeah.
But when you're doing in a program wise, it is undivisible. It is undivisible, so you will get zero division error. You'll get what? Zero division error. See here. When you do 10 by 0 or anything by 0, you'll get a zero division error. Because infinite is something which we cannot measure it, right? So we get a zero division error. So these kind of exceptions also we can handle. How I can handle it is what? Put this piece of code in a try and except block. Try block. Put that line. And what kind of exception you get? Except you get zero division error, right? Do this and print. While dividing with the zero We got 0% error. Simple. Just execute this. If this line occurs, if this gets filed, automatically this will print it. Okay. So while executing this line, we got an exception, and the exception what got handled. Always remember, if there is any exception is there in the try block, then only your except block will get executed. If there is any exception is occurred, then only your try block will get executed. For example, let me show you this. When I'm dividing a 10 with a 2 or with any other number, I'll not get any exception. I'll not get any exception. So I'll not get a zero division error. It is just prints the value. Let me just put it in the print statement so we can see the result. Okay, so let's execute. Once you divide the 10 with this number, this is the result you can get. So now my print statement of my except block not got executed. This piece of code will execute only when you have an exception. When you have an exception in your try block, then only your except block will get executed. Got it?
Yeah, yes.
Let me show you the execution. For example, without try and except. So if you don't have a try and except block, this is what you'll get. Okay. So you only before execution exception what you get, and after exception is not printed. So now what you have to do is take this thing, take this try and accept block, and put it this. Let's say put this line. That is the line which is giving you an exception, right? Just keep it inside. Now this is how your program looks like. Now see, no exceptions. There is no interruption in your program execution once you handle your exception. Once you handle your exception, you will not get any interruptions. So your program can continue as usual. Let me show you some other example, some more examples. Okay, I'm having a dictionary. It's persons dictionary, right? So here is age. Okay. When you have a dictionary and how you can access your dictionary values, persons, use your key. What is the key? Name. Key should be unique and values can be duplicated. If keys already exist, old value will be replaced with a new value. I'm having my persons object. Now when I have keys exist, so that is the reason you are getting the value. If the key is not there, if key is not there, while passing a key, I made a small spelling mistake, which is I gave M first and A later. Now you get what? Key error. You get key error. These cases, what you have to do is take this one, which is raising an exception, return a try and accept it. Except, what is the exception you are getting? Key error, right? Return a key error. What key error? See here. Your exception got handled. Always, if there is any exception is going to rise, then put it in a try block so your except block can handle it. If you don't know what is the exception, For example, I know if I execute this piece of code, I'll be getting a key error. Sometimes we don't know what kind of exception we'll be getting. In
Yeah,
that case,
exactly.
what you have to do is go with the base class, which is the topmost class, which is exception. If you get any exceptions now, this can handle it. If you get any exception, this gets handled. See here, let's execute. This gets handled. What I'm doing is, let me show you another example. I'm having a try block. When I'm printing 1/0, we'll get what? Zero division error. Now you are having another one, which is percents. When you're trying to access percents, this exception. I'm keeping two exceptions. This line also will give an exception. This also will give an exception. I'm keeping it and handling it both with exception. In this case, this is going to be a generic exception. The way you are handling here, the way earlier here, right? You are having only key error. In this case, you are handling a specific exception. The specific one is key error. But this is a very generic one. This is a very generic one. Any kind of exception is occurs in the try block, I can handle it. So we then go this. Okay. Once your exception occurred, and I'll come to that point. Okay. So what happens is, if any exception occurred in this first line, the remaining lines of code will not get executed. The remaining lines of code will not execute in your try block. Outside of the execution will work. Outside, outside of try block. You see here, once there is an exception occurred at line number, this line, the control automatically comes to except block to handle this exception. So you have an exception in this line, right? So the remaining loans will not get executed in your try block. The remaining lines of try block will not get executed. The control automatically comes to your except block. Then exception get handled, then the remaining lines of code will get executed. But it will not come to try block and execute again. It will not come to try block and execute again. Once I got exception here, you got exception here. For example, if you are having a right thing, you are having print statement. So yeah, if you want to see the result, I'm having NAME itself. You got exception at like this line, so this never gets executed. But the remaining lines of code will get executed. Because you got exception at this line, the remaining lines of your try block will not get executed. Okay, let me show you what's happening. See here, you got exception. So this print statement is not happening. For example, I'm changing to 1. Now I don't get a zero division error. I'll not get zero division error. So the control will come here. It should print name. It should print name, right? Okay. So now my name should print it. What is the name? Hanuman. It will print Hanuman. Since there is no exception raised in your try block, there is no exception in your try block, the except block will not get executed. If any exception occurs, then only your except block will get executed. When I said except block will get executed, only any exception is occurred in your try block, then only your except block will get executed. Okay. So here, I got mine 1.1 by 1, it's 1 by is 1.0. So what you are doing? You are doing a division. If you are doing a 4 division, you'll get 1. Right? Got 1. You got the percents and you got the person name. What is the person name? Hanuman. And you don't get any exception in your try block, your except block will not get executed. So this line will not be printed. And you are outside of the try block got printed. Let me show you how this executes in your visualizer. Because you don't have any exception price, so now it will execute. So those are no persons object. Okay? See here, name, age, and person's object got created. This is a dictionary object. You have dictionary, first statement, one by one. You are doing a 4 division, you will get 1. Then your person's name, Hanuman. If there is no exception occurs, control automatically comes to outside. It will not execute this except block. That's what I'm showing you. See, once line number 8 executes, automatically comes to 12. Automatically it came to line number 12. So it prints outside of 12. Clear? Any doubts?
No, it's clear. Shiv.
Not only this, it can be any exceptions. Okay. And most common exceptions, when you're doing the type conversions, that is the time we get most of exceptions. When you're doing type conversions, for example, I took an input from the user, I don't know what he gives it different data type. I'm expecting an integer, and he passes an integer in a string format. What I mean is, you're taking input from the user. How you take input from user? Using input function. Enter your input. Okay. So, for example, you think is a number. And by default, input takes as a string, right? By default, this takes as an integer string. So now what you're doing, you're putting in a type conversion of integer, and executing it. Let's print that number. When I enter a number, for example, I'm entering 78. I don't have any problem. I'll just print it. Okay. So now when I re-execute this, I'm giving 78 in word format. In a word format, not a number format. You'll get what? Error. Got it? So these kind of things also can be handled in your try and accept form. What you have to do is, it's a very simple. You just have to take this and put it in try and accept. Right? Accept. Accept what? You know value error. If you know the error, just handle that specific error. If you don't know the specific error, go with a generic term. Dot error while taking input from user. Okay. See here. Let's get this. I'm giving 8. Got a value error, and that value error got handled. Otherwise, we could have seen the result like this. Now I get that piece of block in try block, so you're not getting exception. Now it is getting handled. So try with more examples. Try with more examples. So you can see the multiple ways to handle your exceptions. Okay. Sometimes you can also see the try and accept a block like this also. Like this. He doesn't give any exceptions. And I just kept only accept a block. He doesn't give any exception. He just gives it like this. So when you're handling exception, you should have given any exception, right? It's something like at least base exception. At least base, this exception is the base class. At least you should have kept that, right? Now what happens? So pass some string. Still got it. Because this kind of accept block, we call it as default blocks. Default Okay. This is a default block which will accept any kind of exceptions. Okay. But always remember this we will not recommend. In real time, we will not recommend. But this is possible in Python. I'm showing you that. Okay. For example, what happens is I'm having thread block. I'm putting zero division header, 10 by 0. I'm having my accept block, and handling that zero division header. Okay. I mean, this is fine. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I want to handle another exception also. A single try block with multiple except block. I want to show you that. What is it? A single try block with multiple except block. A single try block with multiple except block. How it looks like. For example, let's take the previous example. The one I have shown you here, right? This one. Let's do this, copy the same thing. Here, I'm going to keep it for the zero division. If zero division error occurs, then execute this zero division error. Because I'm doing this way because a specific message has to be passed. For example, when this zero division error occurs, I'm having zero division error specific handling of code. When in real time, you'll not just put print statements. You can have different way to handle these exceptions. For example, when you're trying to insert some 100 records in your database. Okay. Now, when you are inserting a 15th record or 16th record, you get an exception. So now what you should do is you should roll back the entire transactions. Got it? Let me take you more commonly faced errors. When you're doing a phone pay, right? When you're doing a phone pay in the beginning days, the money will be debited from your account, but the money will not be received to whom you are sending the money. But money got debited. Okay. But that person also didn't get the money. It is an in processing. I believe everyone would have faced this issue. In that case, since money has been debited from his account, the money is not credited yet, so the transaction has to be rolled back. The transaction has to be rolled back. Okay, leave the transaction event save. Please don't worry. If any money is already debited and it will be refunded to your account. This kind of transactions, if any exception occurred while doing insertion, while sending the money to other person account, then put it in a try block. Then kept it in accept block if while crediting the money to the other person's account, if there is any failed, then handle it in exception block. Okay. Since you already debited from money from his account, the money has to be reverted to the original, the person who is sending the money. Got it? So I'm handling another exception. This is here. Okay. A single try block with multiple except block. Like this, you can have any number. You are having another except. So this is relevant to index error. Index error. Okay, so let's do this. One on one outside of equal. Thus, I don't have any exception. While executing these two lines of code, I didn't get any exceptions. So I'm executing the program. Okay. For example, I'm having 1 divided by the 0. 1 division with the 0. When you are doing 1 divided by 0, you'll get 0 division error. And it will print it, got 0 division error. And outside of trade block. See here, this gets error. Then automatically control comes here. Then outside of trade block. Okay, got 0 division error. Then outside of trade block. Okay, so let's resolve this 0 division error. I resolve the 0 division error, but now I'm going to raise a key error now. I'm going to raise a key error. 1.0, I resolve this, right? 1.0, but when I execute this line of code, I got a key error. I'm getting the key error. But first exception occurs. First exception occurs. What is the exception? This is going to be key error. This will raise what? Key error. It will come and check. Python will come and check if there is any key error except a block. 0 division error. Okay, skip it. Do you have key error? Yeah, key error is there. Then come and execute this. Then come and execute this. If key error is not found, then it will go and check for any default except block is there. Or otherwise, it's a base class, which is exception is there or not. That's how it executes. There's more to this. We'll go with n number of examples. All you have to know in your exception handling is the execution flow. When try block will get executed, when except block will get executed. When you're having 10 lines of code in your try block, if exception occurred at 5th line, the remaining from the 6th line onwards, 6th line to 10th line will not get executed. The control automatically comes to except block. The except block will get executed, then it will go on. It will not go back and execute the line number 6. How many of you understand this statement?
Just a minute. I understood. Shiv.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So there is another alternative to this also. There is another alternative. What you can do is, instead of writing in a multiple lines, you can keep it in a single line. You can keep it in a single line, but there is a different purpose. Now, what is happening? When you are having a 0 division error, you are printing this statement. When you are having key error, you are printing this statement, right? The index error for this. But when you are having in a single line, so how that single line is? Let's do this. Open except block. Open except block. In a parenthesis, put all those exceptions. What is the first exception? 0 division error. Okay. I'm going to get what? Key error. Okay. Done. So do you have any other one? So there is one more. Then if there is one more, put it comma. Now this except block will handle about three exceptions. Okay, if any of these exceptions occurs, if any of these three exceptions occurs, then this except block will get executed. Let me show you. Now, if I execute this, what is the exception? You're going to get a key error, and this will be printed. First line, it will print 1.0. It will print what? 1.0. Then, when I execute the line number 2, you got exception. That is the exception or key error. Now, I'll print this line. Got it? Always, I missed to mention this point. Always remember, a single try block will not get possible. A try block should have except block. Or either there is another block is there, finally block. I'll come to that. A single try block cannot exist. A single try block cannot exist. For example, if I do this, why you are putting this line of code in a try block? Because you will be getting an exception. So that is the reason you are keeping it in a try block. But you don't have except block, then what is the point of having putting it in a try block? What is the point? Got it? So if you execute this, you'll get a syntax errors saying it is incomplete. Okay. If as soon as I put it some except block here, let's do this in a some different line. I'm putting a default except block. Even I don't put any print, I'm just putting only pass. That's it. See here, the error is gone. Error is gone. A try block should have a except block, or else finally block. Okay. Always remember, a single try block cannot exist. A single try block will not exist. So, this try block statement. Okay. Statement 2, statement 3. Except the block. Okay. Now what I'm doing, while executing the statement 1, statement 1 got exception. While executing this statement 1 got exception. Okay. So what is the result? Do my say statement 2 and statement 3 get executed? Or would the control directly comes to accept block? But when executing
Statement 2 and 3 won't execute, right?
yes, very good. Statement 2 and 3 will not get executed. Control automatically comes to accept block. Okay. Statement 2 and statement 3 will not get executed. Control comes to accept. Okay. So what about we got the exception to second block, second statement. We got first statement executed, it worked, no problem. But I'm executing at the second statement. I got exception. Now what happens? Statement 1 gets executed, no problem. Do my statement 3 executes or statement 3 execute not execute? This line is raising an exception. It's already 1 is already executed, so I don't have any problem. Does my line number 3 get executed or not?
No, it won't.
Statement 1 already got executed. Executed. Okay. But statement 3 will not get executed. Control automatically comes to accept. Very good. So what about if the exception occurs in statement 3? So there is no other lines to execute. The control automatically comes to accept.
Yeah.
Very good. That's it. Understood? So that is all for today. So I'm discuss about try and accept block. So there is a tomorrow. There is another block, another two blocks is there, which is else and finally. Normally, what happens is, so in exception handling, we have four blocks total. We have four blocks, which is try block, accept block, else block, and finally. Once you know what all these four, that is all you have to know as part of exception. What is try block is doing, what is accept block is doing, and else and finally. For today's discussion, try and accept is good enough. So you can go and practice the home. The else and finally we'll discuss it tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Any doubts so far? Have a good day.
Very good.